Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive made just for you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners. We're taking a trip back in time today to when Japanese performance cars were at their peak to look into a car that became a legend, the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. So buckle up because this one's going to be a wild ride.
Oh, it really is. You see those boxy Evos on the road today, and you might think, oh, it's just another hot compact. But there's so much more to it than that. The heart and soul of this car came from the dirt and mud of rally racing, and that's what makes it so special.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's easy to forget that the Evo wasn't just some souped-up grocery getter. It was built from a desire to dominate rally stages around the world. Where should we even start?
Well, to understand the Evo, you really got to understand Mitsubishi's history in rally racing. They weren't new to the sport. They'd already had some success with the Galant VR4, which was a bigger and more powerful car.
Oh yeah, the Galant. I remember seeing those on the rally courses back in the late 80s. But why they switched to the smaller Lancer?
Agility. It all comes down to physics on those tight and twisting rally courses. The smaller and lighter Lancer was way more nimble than the Galant could ever be. It was a gamble for sure, but it paid off big time.
And that gamble brought us the Evo, a car that would become the definition of rally racing and performance driving.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that first generation, the Evo. It didn't come out until 1992, which seems a bit late considering how much experience Mitsubishi had in rallying.
You know, it might seem that way, but you got to remember they were already competing and refining the Galant VR4. The Evo, I was like a sudden burst of energy though. They took that powerful 2-liter turbocharged engine and all-wheel drive from the Galant and they crammed it into the Lancer's chassis.
So right from the start, the Evo was packing some serious heat.
Yeah.
And that's where that gentleman's agreement between all the Japanese car makers comes in, right?
Exactly. Officially, the Evo, I was listed at 244 horsepower, but everyone knew it was capable of way more. That agreement was meant to put a stop to the horsepower wars, but it actually ended up creating a huge tuning culture around the Evo.
It's like they accidentally made a monster. Everyone knew there was hidden power under the hood, and they were determined to unlock it. So that agreement actually helped shape the Evo's legend in a way.
Absolutely. And that drive for more power and performance is clear as we go through the different Evos. Let's look at the Evo 6 It came out in 1994.
All right, Evo the second. What were the main changes this time around? More power, I bet.
Yeah, power did go up a little. Officially, it was up to 252 horsepower. But the second generation was more about refining the car than just adding raw power. Mitsubishi took feedback from their rally teams and really focused on making it handle better.
So they tweaked the suspension, the aerodynamics, all those little things that make a big difference on a rally course.
Exactly. They widened the track, adjusted the sway bars, even put on wider tires. It was all about those tiny improvements that add up to make a car faster and more responsive.
Those little improvements usually translate to a better driving experience on the road, too.
Okay, so what about the Evo the Third? This one came out in 1995, and it looked like a serious rally machine. It did. And that aggressive look wasn't just for show. The redesigned front bumper with those bigger openings helped airflow to the radiator intercooler and brakes. And then there's that huge rear spoiler, which was key for downforce at high speeds.
Function over form, as they say. But I'm sure they didn't forget about power either.
Definitely not. They upgraded the turbocharger and bumped up the compression ratio, bringing the official horsepower to 270s.
Man, this thing was a beast. This is where things get really interesting for me. The Evo TFI, it launched in 1996. They completely redesigned it using a new Lancer platform, and it brought some groundbreaking technology to the table.
You're talking about active yaw control, right? This is where the Evo really started to stand out from the crowd.
For those of us who aren't engineers, explain what active yaw control actually does.
Imagine you're driving through a bunch of tight corners. Active yaw control is like having another set of hands on the steering wheel, constantly making tiny adjustments to keep the car perfectly balanced.
So it's all about keeping the car glued to the road, especially when you're pushing it hard. How does it even work?
It uses sensors to track your steering input, how fast the car is turning, and how much grip each tire has. Then it uses the brakes and the all-wheel drive system to shift power between the rear wheels, almost like an invisible hand guiding you through the turns.
Sounds like magic, but it's really just brilliant engineering. And the Evo V got a power boost too, right?
Of course! Thanks to a new twin-scroll turbocharger, which helps with throttle response and reduces turbo lag, power climbed to 276 horsepower.
The Evo V changed the game, and its impact on the performance car world was instant. But Mitsubishi wasn't finished. They had more tricks up their sleeve, and the Evo V proved that. It launched in 1998.
Yeah, The Evo V took everything great about the IV and made it even better. It looked even more aggressive with those wider flared arches and that adjustable aluminum rear spoiler.
So they were really pushing the limits of what a performance car could look like.
And they kept refining that engine, focusing more on improving how the power was delivered instead of just max horsepower. Officially, it stayed at 276, but the way the power kicked in made it feel even faster.
And they made some big upgrades to the interior for this generation too, right? Especially in the GSR model.
You got it. They put in even better Recaro seats, which made the Evo V more comfortable to drive. Even when you were really pushing it, Mitsubishi realized that they needed to appeal to more than just the hardcore enthusiasts.
Smart move. So we've got the powerful engine, the sophisticated all-wheel drive, and now a more comfortable interior. What's next in the Evo story?
The Evo 6 came out in 1999, and they really focused on reliability and cooling. They knew they had a winning formula, so they worked on refining it, making the car tougher and more reliable for both street driving and track use.
A lot of those improvements came from what they learned in rally racing, right?
For sure. They upgraded the intercooler, the oil cooler, they even put in new pistons. It was all about making sure the car could handle the punishment of rally stages and still be reliable for everyday driving.
The Evo 6 also marked the debut of a very special edition, the Tommi Mäkinen edition, named after that legendary Finnish rally driver.
It was a great tribute to Mäkinen, who won 4 World Rally Championships in a row for Mitsubishi, driving an Evo. This special edition had unique styling, a faster steering ratio, and those iconic red and black Recaro seats embroidered with Mäkinen's logo.
It was a perfect way to send off the 6th generation, and it's a collector's item these days. Now let's talk about the Evo 7th, which came out in 2001. This one was a bit of a turning point for the Evo, wasn't it?
It was. They switched to a new platform, the Lancer Sedan, which meant the car was a little bigger, a bit more refined, and, yeah, a little heavier.
I bet some of the die-hard Evo fans were worried that it was losing its edge, becoming more of a grand tourer than a rally-bred machine.
Maybe. But Mitsubishi didn't give up on performance. They introduced a new active center differential, which worked together with active yaw control to make the car handle even better. And torque went up again, this time to 282 pound-feet.
So they were still pushing the limits of performance even as they made the car easier to live with. And this generation also saw the introduction of a feature that was a little controversial.
You're talking about the automatic transmission, right? The GTA. It was Mitsubishi trying to make the Evo appeal to a wider audience, giving people who didn't want to shift gears themselves a more comfortable driving experience.
It was a bold move. And it shows that Mitsubishi was thinking about the future of the Evo, trying to find ways to attract more buyers.
Exactly. They wanted to make a car that could be both a thrilling performance machine and a comfortable daily driver.
The Evo 7th laid the groundwork for what would become a global phenomenon. The Evo 8th. This one arrived in 2003, and it was a game changer, especially for car enthusiasts in the U.S.
This was the first Evo to be officially sold in the United States, and it went head-to-head with its biggest rival, the Subaru Impreza WRX STI. It was a battle to win over performance car lovers, and the Evo 8th came out swinging.
Oh, it did. Tell us more about what made the Evo 8th so special.
Well, visually, it was more aggressive than ever, with a new front bumper, those signature hood vents, and some stylish Enkei wheels. It also had Brembo brakes for some serious stopping power. But what really made the Evo 8th a legend was what was under the hood.
That 2-liter turbocharged engine was a masterpiece of engineering, wasn't it?
It really was, depending on where you were in the world. The Evo 8th had different levels of performance. In Japan, the standard output was 276 horsepower. But in the UK, things got a bit, shall we say, unofficial.
Ah, you're talking about those famous FQ models, right? FQ standing for, well, we'll let our listeners use their imaginations.
Let's just say it stood for fast and quick. They had models like the FQ300, the FQ320, and even the crazy FQ400, which had a whopping 405 horsepower.
Remember that Top Gear episode where they pitted the FQ400 against a Lamborghini Murcielago?
How could I forget? It was a total David and Goliath situation, and the Evo held its own.
Wow.
It even beat the Lamborghini in some of the tests. It was proof of how incredibly capable the Evo was and the skill of the engineers who designed it.
The FQ400 was a legend. But Mitsubishi wasn't done with the Evo 8 yet. In 2005, they introduced the MR edition, which is all about even sharper handling.
The MR, which stood for Mitsubishi Racing, had upgraded Bilstein shocks, a lightweight aluminum roof, and forged BBS wheels. It was the ultimate version of the Evo 8, taking its performance potential as far as it could go.
It's amazing how Mitsubishi kept refining and improving the Evo with each new version, pushing the limits of what a performance car could be.
They were relentless in their pursuit of performance, and it showed in every part of the car.
The Evo 8th really solidified Mitsubishi's reputation as a maker of world-class performance cars, and it set the stage for what would be the second-to-last chapter in the Evo saga, the Evo Nice.
The Evo Next came out in 2005, and it was a more subtle evolution, at least visually.
It looked a lot like the 8th, right?
Yeah, it did. They made the front bumper a bit sleeker, updated the taillights, and made some small changes to the aerodynamics, but the real magic was happening under the hood.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about the mechanical upgrades.
The biggest news was that they added MIVS to the engine's intake side. It's Mitsubishi's variable valve timing system. This tech let them improve fuel efficiency and make the engine's power band wider. So it had both low-end grunt and high RPM scream.
MIVSC was a game changer. It showed that Mitsubishi wasn't just focused on raw power, they were also thinking about efficiency and making the car more enjoyable to drive.
Exactly. And of course, they kept offering those powerful FQ models in the UK with the FQ300, FQ320, FQ340, and eventually the FQ360.
Oh, and we can't forget about the Evo iX wagon,
Sure.
a rare and very sought-after version that had the practicality of a station wagon with the performance of an Evo. Sadly, that one never made it to the U.S.
Yeah, it's a shame. It would have been a big hit with enthusiasts who wanted a bit more space but didn't want to sacrifice performance.
All right, let's move on to the last chapter in the Evo story, the Evo X. This one came out in 2007, and it was a pretty big change from the ones that came before it, wasn't it?
It was the Evo X move to a new platform, and it was bigger and heavier overall. It also marked a change in philosophy for the Evo, embracing a more refined and technologically advanced approach to performance.
I bet some hardcore Evo fans felt like it had lost some of that raw edge that made the earlier cars so special. What do you think?
I get where they're coming from. The Evo X was definitely a more mature and sophisticated machine, but it still had that core Evo DNA. It had a brand new all-aluminum 2-liter turbocharged engine, which was a technological marvel in itself. And for the first time, you could choose between a 5-speed manual and a fancy 6-speed twin-clutch automatic transmission.
Those twin-clutch transmissions were all the rage back then. They shifted super fast and improved performance.
Exactly. And of course, the Evo X still had Mitsubishi's sophisticated all-wheel drive system, which they renamed Super All-Wheel Control, or SAWC.
It was still an amazing piece of technology, but it also felt like the Evo was growing up, becoming more refined and less raw.
It was a sign of the times, I guess. The market was shifting toward the performance cars that were more practical, and the Evo X reflected that.
But Mitsubishi didn't totally abandon the Evo's wild side, did they? They still had those FQ models in the UK.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Evo X had its fair share of high-performance versions, like the FQ300, FQ360, and even a limited-run FQ400, which had an insane 440 horsepower.
Like they couldn't help themselves. They had to keep pushing the limits, giving those hardcore enthusiasts something truly special.
The Evo X was a fitting end to a legendary line of cars. It showed off Mitsubishi's engineering talent and their dedication to performance.
It's sad that the Evo X was the end of the road for this iconic car. Mitsubishi stopped making the Lancer Evolution in 2015, and it left a hole in the hearts of performance car fans everywhere. But what a run. 10 generations, each one pushing the limits of what a performance car could be.
And it wasn't just about speed. The Evo's story is tied to the history of rally racing, with legendary drivers like Tommi Mäkinen pushing these cars to their absolute limit on stages all over the world. It's that rally heritage that makes the Evo so special, even today.
And it's that spirit of innovation and always striving for better performance that we're going to explore more in our next segment.
We'll take a closer look at the engineering innovations that made the Evo such a powerful machine, and we'll examine its lasting impact on the car world. It's amazing how the Evo became more than just a performance car. It became a cultural icon. You saw it in video games, movies, and it inspired a whole generation of car enthusiasts.
You're so right. I remember spending hours playing Gran Turismo and Colin McRae Rally, trying to master those early Evos. It was like a digital gateway drug to real-world performance driving for a lot of us.
And who could forget Paul Walker driving that Evo the 7th in Too Fast, Too Furious? That car became an instant classic. It cemented the Evo's place in pop culture.
It's crazy to think how a car that was born on rally stages could have such a huge impact on popular culture.
It shows how unique the Evo was. It blended performance technology and raw driving excitement. But let's get into the engineering that made the Evo such a legend. We talked a bit about active yaw control, but there's so much more to it.
I'm ready to geek out. Let's talk about that all-wheel drive system. It wasn't just your average all-wheel drive. It was like a symphony of mechanical and electronic wizardry.
It really was. They just kept refining it over the years, and it all led to the SAWC system in the Evo X.
SAWC, Super All-Wheel Control. For those who haven't memorized all the Evo acronyms, But what made it so different from the older versions?
Okay, imagine this. You're driving on a twisty mountain road, pushing the Evo to its limits. SAWC is like having a co-driver who can see the road ahead, anticipating your every move, and making tiny adjustments to keep the car perfectly balanced.
So it's not just reacting to what's happening, it's predicting what's going to happen. That's wild.
Yeah, it uses a whole network of sensors to monitor everything, from the steering angle and how much you're pressing the gas pedal to the yaw rate and how much the tires are slipping. Then it uses all that info to send power to the right wheels, optimizing grip and control.
Okay, I get that.
Right.
But give me a real-world example. How does SAWC actually make a difference when you're driving?
So let's say you're coming up to a corner pretty fast. With a normal all-wheel drive system, you might experience understeer. That's where the car wants to keep going straight instead of turning. But with SAWC, the system knows that understeer is about to happen, and it sends more power to the outside rear wheel before it even happens.
So it's almost like it's helping you steer the car with the gas pedal.
You got it. And it can do the opposite, too, if you're oversteering, where the back end of the car starts to slide out. SAWC can brake the inside rear wheel to help you get the car back under control.
It sounds like you got to really trust the car to let it do all that.
You do, but once you experience it, it's amazing. It gives you this level of confidence and control that's unlike anything else. And it's not just for performance on dry pavement. SAWC is awesome in tough conditions, too.
So rain, snow, gravel, the Evo could handle it all.
Oh, yeah. They designed SAWC to adapt to any surface, so you get the best grip and stability no matter what.
It's technology like that that makes the Evo stand out from other performance cars. It wasn't just about raw power. It was about smart engineering and really understanding how to make a car handle at its absolute limit.
And that engineering expertise wasn't just in the all-wheel drive system. The Evo's engine was a masterpiece, too.
That's right. We talked about MIV, SC, and turbochargers, but what else made the Evo's engine so special?
Well, for one thing, it was incredibly strong and durable. Remember, they designed these engines to handle the abuse of rally racing, where they were constantly being pushed to their limits.
So they were built tough.
They were.
Yeah.
And because of that, they had huge tuning potential. People quickly figured out that they could get even more power out of these engines with some fairly simple mods.
And that really fueled the aftermarket scene for the Evo.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. There are tons of tuners and parts makers out there who are dedicated to squeezing every last bit of performance out of the Evo's engine. It shows how versatile the platform is and how well engineered the original design was.
It's mind-blowing that even today, people are still finding ways to make these cars faster and more capable.
It just goes to show how much the Evo is still loved and the passion of its fans. But it wasn't just about performance. The Evo's engine was also amazingly responsive and fun to drive.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of modern turbocharged engines can feel a bit laggy. You know, there's a delay between when you hit the gas and when the power actually kicks in. But the Evo's engine was different. It was so immediate. The power delivery was so linear that it made you feel like you were really connected to the car.
So it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the feeling, the experience of driving the car.
Exactly. And that's something that often gets lost when people are just chasing bigger horsepower numbers. The Evo's engine was a reminder that true performance is about more than just brute force. It's about a perfect blend of power responsiveness and driver engagement.
And speaking of driver engagement, let's talk about the Evo's transmission. We mentioned the automatic option that came later, but for most enthusiasts, the Evo was all about that manual gearbox.
Oh, for sure. The Evo's manual transmission was just a joy to use. It had this wonderfully mechanical feel, precise short throws, and a clutch pedal that had a nice weight to it. It was a gearbox that made you feel like you were one with the car, like you were part of the machine.
It's too bad that manual transmissions are getting so rare these days. There's just something special about that direct connection between the driver and the car.
I agree. It's a raw experience that's hard to copy with an automatic, no matter how advanced they get.
But it wasn't just the mechanical parts that made the Evo such a great driver's car. The chassis and suspension setup were also huge factors.
Absolutely. The Evo's chassis was super stiff. It gave the suspension a rock-solid base to work from. And speaking of suspension, the Evo was known for how amazingly well it handled and gripped the road.
It could take corners like it was on rails, right?
It could. The Evo suspension was an engineering marvel. They found the perfect balance between ride comfort and handling performance. It could absorb bumps and dips in the road without feeling mushy, and it could handle high-speed corners with amazing composure.
So the Evo was the whole package. A powerful engine, sophisticated all-wheel drive, a slick manual transmission, and a chassis and suspension that could handle anything you threw at it.
It really was. It was a performance car built by people who loved cars, for people who loved cars. And it's no wonder it became such a legend.
But the Evo's legacy goes beyond the cars themselves. It also had a big influence on the development of all-wheel drive tech across the whole car industry.
That's right. Mitsubishi was a pioneer with active yaw control and SAWC, and that paved the way for the advanced all-wheel drive systems we see in performance cars today.
So the Evo wasn't just a great car. It actually helped shape the future of the car industry.
It did, and that shows the vision and engineering genius of the people who created it.
We've talked about the car's performance, its tech, its impact on culture, and the people behind it.
But I think the most important thing to remember is that the Evo was more than just a car. It was an experience. It was a car that connected with drivers on a deep level, giving them a level of excitement and engagement that few other cars could match.
It was a car that made you feel alive.
You got it. And that's why people still love it so much, even though they don't make it anymore.
Well said. Now, I know we've been talking about the Evo in a historical context, but it's hard not to think about the future. Do you think there's any chance Mitsubishi will bring back the Evo?
A lot of enthusiasts have been asking that question. And to be honest, it's tough to say. The car world is changing so fast with more and more focus on electric cars and self-driving cars.
So you're saying that a new Evo would have to be totally different from the old ones?
It would have to. But I still think there's room for a performance car that captures the spirit of the Evo, even if it's electric.
Imagine an all-electric Evo with instant torque and that legendary all-wheel drive tech updated for today's world.
That would be amazing. It could be a game changer, just like the original Evo was back in the day. But even if Mitsubishi doesn't bring back the Evo name, its legacy will keep inspiring future performance cars.
And that's a legacy worth celebrating. You know, as much as I love all the tech talk, I think what really made the Evo special was its personality. It wasn't just some car. It had this raw, almost rebellious feel that really resonated with car enthusiasts.
Yeah, that's true. The Evo was kind of an underdog. It wasn't all flashy or fancy. It was just a pure performance machine that could really outperform its class.
And it wasn't afraid to get a little dirty. This was a car that was born on rally stages. Remember, where it had to battle the elements and go through some serious abuse.
Exactly. It was a car that earned its reputation the hard way, and that gave it a realness that a lot of other performance cars just didn't have.
It was a car for drivers who loved the pure driving experience, that connection between human and machine.
And it rewarded those drivers with an incredible feeling of satisfaction. The Evo made you pay attention. You had to be skillful, you had to respect it, but if you gave it what it needed, it gave you an amazing driving experience in return.
It wasn't a car for the timid. It was a car for those who wanted to push their limits, to see what a car could really do.
And it was a car that could make you feel like a hero, even if you were just running errands.
It's funny how a car can make you feel so strongly. I think that's what separates the truly great cars from the just okay ones. They have this something extra, this personality that's more than just the parts they're made of.
The Evo definitely had that. It was more than just a car. It was an icon, a symbol of a time when performance cars were all about raw thrills and pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
And it's a time that a lot of us miss. These days, performance cars are getting so complicated and computerized. They're crazy fast and capable. But sometimes it feels like the driver is becoming more of a passenger.
I know what you mean. There's something pure about that old-school analog driving experience that's hard to recreate with all the new technology.
But that doesn't mean the future of performance cars is all doom and gloom. Like we talked about before, there's a chance for an electric Evo, a car that could combine the spirit of the original with the latest electric powertrain tech.
I hope Mitsubishi thinks about bringing back the Evo name, even if it's a completely different kind of car. The world needs more cars that make people passionate and excited, cars that challenge the norm and push the limits of what's possible.
And if there's any car that can do that, it's the Evo. It's a name that carries a lot of history, a lot of expectation.
But I think if Mitsubishi goes for it with the same dedication and passion that they had for the original Evos, they could create something truly amazing, something that would honor the Evo's legacy while also blazing a trail for a new era of performance driving.
I have no doubt they could. But for now, all we can do is dream and remember those glory days of the Lancer Evolution.
And appreciate how much it influenced the car world. The Evo's legacy is going to inspire engineers and car lovers for a long time.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution, I want to thank all of you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners for coming along on this ride with us. We hope you enjoyed this look back at one of the most iconic performance cars ever made.
It's been great sharing our love for the Evo with you.
And don't forget, there's a new episode of Vintage Car Chronicles every day. You can find us on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and YouTube. We'll be exploring the history, the tech, and the stories behind some of the coolest cars ever built.
So make sure you subscribe and join us for our next deep dive into the world of classic cars.
Until then, keep that Evo spirit alive. Drive with passion, push your limits, and never stop enjoying the thrill of driving.